This is the second part to part 50 of file handling in Java, and in this instance, rather in this episode, we're going to be looking at reading from a file. So let's actually get started by writing a main method, and in the main method, we're actually going to make use of the buffered reader class. Alright, so if you remember in the previous part of this tutorial, we did look at the buffered writer, which allows us to write to a file, is it? So in order to read from a file, we need to make use of the opposite of the buffered writer class, which is the buffered reader class. So we can go ahead and call the buffered reader class. Then we can call this one the object reader. Then it's going to be called to a new buffered reader. Then we need to specify the file that we are trying to read, is it? And you know that in order to specify a file, we also need to specify, we need to make use of the file reader class, right? Just as we had to specify the file writer class, we need to specify the file reader class. So maybe we can just call this one the object fr. Then it's going to be called to file reader. Then you need to specify the file that we are trying to read. So we need to read from demo.txt, right? And then we need to pass the fr object to the constructor there. So we are getting an error and a warning. So the error is that we need to surround this in a try and catch block, because remember, we are trying to read a file, but the program doesn't really know if the file really exists. So it's a potential error waiting to happen, or a potential exception. So we've seen that in order to solve that problem, we just simply need to surround this code inside of a try and catch block. So let me make sure that my buffered reader line goes back to where it belongs. And what happened here? Let me see what I did here. I did it wrong. I had to surround with try catch. Let me just fix it manually because I don't know what's happening with my cursor there. So we need to try and do this. Then we can take this file reader class invocation from there, and we can put it inside of here. Then we can get rid of this comment there that was auto generated. Then so now we are reading our file, right? Rather, we now have a reader object that we can retrieve information from a file. But in order for us to actually print something onto the screen, maybe let's start by printing out something onto the console. So we can do reader dot read line. I make use of the read line method. Then we can specify, instead of it calling the file not found exception, we can just use the exception class, as it were, so that we know that all the other exceptions, they inherit from the exception class. So we can just use exception over there. Then we need to close the reader so that we avoid resource leakage. So reader dot close. Then we just clean up by getting rid of unused exports, so that the code looks clean, just like that. So yeah, so this is how you can go about to read from a file. So we want to read from this text file right here, called demo. So let me just go ahead and run this. This time around, since we are reading from a file, the output is going to be down here in the console. So this is the output, right? This will be returned to the text file, even more content. So you can see that we're actually reading from this file right here, right? But you realize that for the most part, when you get questions that require you to read or write to a file, you typically want to make it so that you read every line in turn, instead of just reading a single line at a time. So the way you can go about it is to make use of a while loop in Java, right? But there's actually one thing that you need to realize when you do that. So let me just go ahead and comment out this line. So since we want to read line by line, right, we first need to declare a string. Maybe let's just call this one line, right? then we need to make use of the while loop, right? So we are going to say while, right? Then we need to now say line dot read line is not equal to now, right? This is really important. Supposed to be reader dot read line. So we are saying while reader dot read line is not equal to now, we need to do something. Then the something that we need to do is essentially output the value of line, is it? So we are going to say reader. We are going to now make use of the line variable that we declared there. So we're going to say line is equal to reader dot read line, is it? So it's actually just going to allow us to it's actually going to allow us to check and see if that is on the line number 12, we are going to check to see if the reader is reading a now statement, or rather if it is iterating through something inside of the text file. Because remember, if there's content, we are going to store it inside of the line, then we print it, content. Then when you get to line number 7, there's going to be nothing, or rather, in other words, the contents of that line are going to be now. So we need to specify that is the exit condition for our loop, as it were. Alright, so that's how you can go about it, right? So you declare a variable called line that is going to hold your current line. Then you are going to make use, you're going to check if line is, you're making the reader object to read a line. Then you store that that red line inside of this variable right here, right? Then you are checking to see if it is now. So now simply means if there's nothing, right? So in other words, we are saying now if the current line that has been read is not equal to nothing, we simply want to output that line. Otherwise, when that line becomes false, or rather when that line is not equal to now, or is equal to now, as it were, right, it means that this condition becomes false. So it essentially means that we break out of the loop. Then we can go ahead and close the reader, as it were. Then we should be done reading from a file. So let's actually go ahead and run this and check out the content, rather the output in the console. So you realize that this is the content that we have inside of this file right there. So yeah, that's how you can go about reading data from a text file in Java by making use of the buffered reader class. So that's just about it for this tutorial. I'll see you in the next one.